Well, welcome back for another episode of From the Belly. I'm Doug Wheeler, and I'm always saying this, and I'll keep saying it. I'm really proud of the work that we're doing. I'm really, really proud and honored to have the lineup of guests that I've had the last however many. I think we're in this new season with Why Not Church, or maybe Why Church. I think this might be my 12th guest. Let's see. I just interviewed somebody yesterday that lives in Lafayette, Jack Mandeville. And now I'm talking to Jenny Smith, who lives in Kaiser, Oregon, which is not too far from where I live in McMinnville. I'm going to read a bit of a bio, and we're going to get into some good stuff today. Jenny, thank you for being here.
Yeah, glad to be with you.
And I met Jenny the way I met Jack and the way I met everybody else in this new season. Facebook has got it figured out. They present all these clergy folks to me. I go on, listen to, or check the website out and and I read some of Jenny's content. And I'm like, yeah, I want to talk to her. Yeah, I want to talk to her. So somebody said to me yesterday, you're talking to all these people that are in agreement with you, and that's great, and they're in your tribe. But when are you going to talk to somebody from the other side? And I said, well, that's interesting you mentioned that, because I've been thinking about that. So that's percolating for me, but that's not what we're doing today. So I've got a few questions, Jenny, that I put together based upon the Zoom call that we had last week, and you helped me with some of that. And I reshaped some of it and whatever. So I've got a nice set of questions to ask. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about the church that you pastor in Kaiser, Oregon. Let me read a bio, and then you can flesh it out a little bit if you want to. I got this right off of your church website, and I just took a little bit of it. Jenny grew up in Ohio and Alaska. She attended Florida Southern College, and after receiving her Masters of Divinity degree in 2010, Jenny served churches in Alaska and Washington before coming to Salem, but you're actually in Kaiser. And we all know that Kaiser is kind of a neighborhood, if you will, of Salem. Or it's its own town, though, right?
Yeah.
Right on. Her love for God, living in the way of Jesus, and the church's invitation to embody love comes through in her writing, speaking, and embodied leadership. And you are the senior pastor of Morningside United Methodist Church. And we're going to have you talk a little bit about the different, I don't know about styles, but the different types of Methodists. Because some folks might not even know, okay, United Methodist, and because we've heard of a free Methodist. Does that mean United Methodists aren't free? I mean, we're going to work with some of that. But anyways, Jenny, what do you want to add to or say about that bio and your journey and the church that you now pastor?
Yeah, I think it's a good summary. I've been all over the country when I was a little kid. My dad's a United Methodist pastor as well. Moved us up to Alaska when I was 9. And so that shaped so much of my worldview that at such a young age, the world got really big. And we loved our years in Alaska. And then when it was time, started making our way down the West Coast over here. Served a couple churches in Washington and loved people there. And now are here in Salem. And yeah, I live in Kaiser, and the church I serve is in South Salem, Oregon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Morningside's an incredible group of people. Been around since like 1955. And one of their things they're proudest of, and they should be, is they've been a reconciling church for 30 years, since like 1995. And so for them, in our tradition, means that in 1995, they took a church-wide vote to say that the queer community are welcome here, children of God, get to be in leadership. Just an incredible thing to do in 1995.
I was going to say, that's 30 years ago.
I know. So they just celebrated the 30th anniversary of that earlier this year. And it continues to just be a really beautiful safe haven for all different kinds of beloved human beings to figure out what community looks like. And isn't that all what all of us are kind of trying to do right now?
Some of the folks that initiated that wonderful, wonderful inclusion in 95, some of those folks are still attending. Wow. And family members.
We had a really beautiful moment on our anniversary Sunday where I had all the newer people within the last few years. We put together this litany of, because of you, I now get to ... And so we had like 15, 20 people up at the front of the church, and just to go one at a time, and have people of all ages. And then for everyone else that was there in 95, just to receive the gratitude and that legacy and that love. It was really sweet.
That's beautiful. Is your father is he still alive?
Yeah. He retired in the Methodist Church in Bend, Oregon, a number of years ago, and lives over there with my mom. And yeah.
What's a retired pastor? I know it's different for everybody. What's a retired pastor do? Are we talking like a 40-year career or something like that?
Yeah.
What do you do after all that ministry and then it's kind of over, or is it over?
That's a great question. I like watching my retired colleagues, and my dad and my father-in-law is also a retired United Methodist pastor.
Oh
And
gosh,
so
well,
it's fun to watch right? And this is what everyone's kind of renegotiating what retirement and all these phases look like, I think, as technology changes and we evolve. But watching a lot of them, it's guest preaching here and there when one of their colleagues is sick and can't be there. I have amazing retired clergy in the community I'm in right now. They're helping visit people. They're helping with funerals. They've known the people longer than me. And so there's no threat to that for me. I'm like, more the merrier. Please come help me. And I love putting retired clergy to work when they want to. And some of them say, I'm going to go hang out with my family and go travel, and I'll be here a little bit once in a while. And I love that. My dad has a cool ministry. He is a woodworker. And so he, in his shop, creates all these sacred words for people out of wood. And that's been this really beautiful, just these small ways that we still bear witness to God moving in our life, even if it's not our full-time job anymore.
Right on. So you have siblings?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm the oldest of four. And my youngest brother passed away unexpectedly 3 or 4 years ago. And so I always say, right, like I'm the oldest of four. 3 of us are living. And my brother Ryan lives up in Alaska, and my sister lives right here in Salem with me.
And are they in clergy work, ministry work? No.
And working with my brother is an engineer, helping some of the Alaska Native villages in Alaska make sure they have water, and just doing some really cool work up in Alaska.
Wow. So what do you and your dad talk about?
Well, funny thing is, even today I have a note, call Dad about this question. So he's like my on-call coach and consultant for just, it's just nice when you've got someone you trust and love who knows the ins and outs of your career. So I really appreciate that.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's really nice. But also just, everything else. We're both Ohio State fans, and both of us born in Ohio. And just lots of ways that we connect at this season of life, which is great.
And I think the Buckeyes they haven't lost a game, correct?
Nope. Yeah. Doing pretty great this year.
That's a machine. I sometimes think you could take like a middle of the road NFL team or clearly a losing NFL team. And I think on any given Saturday or Sunday, I think the Buckeyes could play them. I mean, it really, some of you would probably tell me I'm stupid to say that, but it's like, that's a machine, man.
It's an incredible program. Lots of consistency.
Oh, gosh. How old is your father?
He just had a birthday. Yeah.
Okay. If we look through his eyes and listen with his ears to what's happening in the country now, politically and spiritually, church-wise, and seeing how the collusion of those, what does he see? What does he feel about what you and I see being younger?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think my sense is that he kind of watches it with a lot of curiosity, with a lot of, I guess the better way to say it is, we've spent a lot of years talking about how both of us have been shaped and formed by the institutional church, specifically for us, more progressive leaning institutional churches. And I mean, this is where I learned from him that the queer community was welcome at church 20 years ago, because I watched him welcome and love people like it wasn't even a thing. And I was hearing this other kind of Christian theology go, but Dad, for them, it is a thing. And he's like, it's not a thing. And so it was just really beautiful to be raised in that. And so I think what we see now is that churches who know who they are and have language for the ground they stand on, especially through some interpretations, what I would call more inclusive interpretations of scripture. I think those churches, every time people walk into them, they're just kind of like, I didn't know this existed. And that's been my daily reality of ministry in this season, is what I would call Christian nationalism is so present and so in people's faces that we're watching so many people pull back, and rightfully so much harm. And yet, what does then a progressive church do in this season? Because
Mm.
they're still claiming the same gospel, they're claiming the same book. And how is it that we're
Yes,
interpreting it so differently?
that's what Jack and I were talking about. Jack Mandeville. Well, that's what we were talking about. I asked Jack that same question. It's the same book. It's the same gospel, but not. How does this happen? And I often think of like an outsider just going, what is happening with all of you? What's going on in there? Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I think what I've been saying for years is that the more progressive, inclusive, expansive faith communities do a pretty terrible job of telling their story, of, in a sense,
Hmm.
advertising and promoting. And I mean, part of that just goes against kind of the posture of the community to start with. But
Hmm.
people want to know you exist. And so many of you
Wow.
do. And how do we tell that story? I'm a big communications person. I love writing, minored in it in college, and I'm just
Hmm.
always curious about how faith communities tell their story better, especially the ones that are really trying to not actively harm people.
Hmm. Hmm. How to tell the story. That's really, really good. And you and I are we agreed when we talked a week or so ago, we're going to talk about witness later.
Hmm.
We're going to talk
Yeah.
about that and what that means. I'm remembering something you said that I couldn't stop thinking about it. So we'll get to that. Thanks for sharing about your father. Yeah. So here's my first question, and we might have already touched on some of this. Some believe faith and anxiety don't mix. The strong faith should erase worry and anxiety. But you are a pastor who faces and has faced panic attacks and anxiety disorder, and later learned you're autistic and have ADHD. So you are definitely living neurodivergent in a different mindset of the way the world's set up. How do you reconcile faith with your mental health?
I think one of the first things I had to do early on was really deconstruct that narrative that I'd been handed at some point about if you just pray hard enough, everything will be okay. And I kept hearing that just, on the radio, kind of pop culture, just in the air. That wasn't necessarily something I heard at my specific churches, but it was just in the air. And then I kept thinking as a teenager and young adult, I'm like, I'm really anxious about a lot of things. Am I not good enough? Am I not praying enough? Like, clearly the problem must be with me. And so I think at some point I started to just deconstruct that. I go, I don't know if that's true. And the more that I learned about mental health, the more that I really started to dive into my own healing journey, then I was like, oh, there's this whole other world inside of me, and this is holy, and God's here, and love is here. So I don't I don't know that it's bad. It's a really hard way to live. It's painful, but once I write this weekly Substack called The Thread because I'm obsessed with this metaphor of just pulling the little loose threads in our life one at a time, kind of wondering where they'll take us, but also terrified because we probably built this whole thing like on no one mess with the threads. Like I've got it all lined up, no one mess with it. And I was like, but really, is that really helping us? And so part of my story has been, we're just gonna, like one day in 2017, I was like, I have to start figuring out why I'm so anxious. And that really kickstarted a journey. Once I, 5 years later, found out, oh, autism, oh, sensory, oh, hello, brain. This isn't just anxiety. There's a framework here, and I can actually adapt my entire life to better fit who I was the whole time. Look at that. Like the anxiety plummets, the mental health gets better, the muscle pain goes down. Like, oh, I was just trying to live inside this life that wasn't who I could be. So then once you start doing that, then it's just like, oh, the whole thing is glorious and it's all kind of a shit show too. And you just kind of, at the end of the day, go, okay, divine one, you created each of us. And then we get to have this journey where we kind of untangle all of it to ideally get to touch into that soul that's been in there the whole time. But our world makes that pretty hard to reach. And so I'm a huge fan of talking about mental health, of it being a significant way that we heal in our life as Jesus people. Yeah.
It's kind of a two-part question. Why does Jenny Smith believe in God? And why does Jenny Smith, uh, and I say claim, but why does she profess that she has encounters? with this God. It's one thing to say, okay, God exists, and somehow something put all of this together, but somehow I'm just thinking of the word encounter. So why is that, and how can Jenny trust that? How does she trust that
You
in
know,
this crazy, messy, as you said, kind of a shit show of things?
no,
Sometimes
that's
just in our
real.
heads, right?
Yeah, no, that's real. I go back again to the culture that I was raised in. I watched my dad and others, and I do the same thing now to people. I'll preach a sermon, I'll have a conversation about a matter of faith, and then at the end, I kind of lean in and I go, but I might be wrong. And for some people, that maybe is really scary and uncomfortable, especially if they've looked up to a spiritual authority or someone with some wisdom in their life. I have found it to be deeply liberating that this is all my best guess of what I have sensed to be true. In United Methodist World, John Wesley and others who kind of formed our movement offered us something called the Wesleyan Quadrilateral. And there's lots of ways to talk about it, but one is that we lean on 4 ways of knowing something to be true. So it isn't just like our gut feeling that day. Like there's a little bit more that we lean on when we discern. And one of them is scripture. When we say scripture is primary, there's lots of ways that I know God because of what I read in those stories. I certainly know of Jesus and his priority and how he embodied love. That for me takes priority over almost everything else in that book, that I have a hermeneutic of Jesus' love. But we also lean on the traditions of hundreds and millions of people who've come before me and before each of
Yeah.
us. And we say, what have they learned about the divine? Okay, that informs. Like, I'm not new to this. I think sometimes in our individualistic culture, we're like, I am brand new to this whole. No, so many people have done the same journey we
Almost to
have.
the point of saying, I invented it.
I know.
I've invented this.
Yeah. This is not the first time around the block. So, scripture and our tradition,
Hmm.
and we use reason. In the Methodist Church, we do not check our brains at the door. Does this make sense based on what I know about what it means to be human? Because sometimes a lot of churches can wiggle their way around that one and get us into these frameworks that you're like, really? That doesn't seem like. So we really value that in our discernment. And the last one is our experience, like you said. I've had so many experiences of what I have felt in my body to be, that's something holy. Like that connection, that conversation, that tree, that. Now I have also learned, once I found out I was autistic, I think everything is magical. So my
Is that
autism,
different?
yeah.
Now, excuse me, but is that different than just being ADHD? Does that take on
Um,
even a more magical? I was
Sometimes it's
diagnosed.
hard to unhook the two. I move
Okay.
in both frameworks to know which is which. But autistic folks do have an ability to really sometimes slow down time and kind of be in a moment and be so fascinated by something that I think sometimes others miss. So I've just always been like that. And I thought everyone was like that because I didn't know any different.
Hmm.
And then I write poems and I write, and people are like, huh. I'm like, wait, you don't, we're having different experiences.
And
And the
when did
divine
you,
shows up in so many different ways. Yeah.
and Jenny, when did you realize that? Did you realize that as a teen that the world is, there is a difference within me and how I see the world and how I experience it? Or did you go all the way up through even to, you had a recent diagnosis, which I want to talk about some.
Yeah, that's a great question. I almost hate to answer it because it makes me feel so naive, but that is
Hmm.
a characteristic of autistic people at times. We take
Okay.
things so literally and we miss some of the nuance of things. We don't always read between the lines as well as maybe other people do.
Hmm.
I really still struggle with that. I still don't understand neurotypical people. I mean, I spent my whole life trying to act like them and be like them and keep up with them. And I've burned out so many times I can't count. So now
Hmm.
I'm still just kind of wrestling with, do you all not see the way that sunlight is glistening off that water? Why are you not stopped dead in your tracks looking at that for an hour?
Oh.
Because I just think it's glorious. So I don't know.
Sometimes people say, Doug, did I answer your question? I'm like, I don't even remember what I asked you because
Yeah.
I'm just listening to what you just said, and I'm going, wow, I'm imagining looking at that sunlight as well. Talk about these different frames or frameworks of ADHD, typical, if you will, and then autism. Can you help us to understand the differentiation there.
Yeah, for me, it feels like there's two parts of me that are always kind of in tension. They're always kind of arguing with each other. My ADHD parts of me is the way I talk about it. They get so excited about novelty and new things, new ideas. I love to dream something up from blank paper to concept. I could do that all day. And I've since learned that gives me so much dopamine, which is helping my brain just really function at a fast clip. It moves very quickly. So I really honestly always struggled with my work rhythms and all my jobs I've had because I can get, 2 weeks of work done in like one day, but then the next 3 days I can't even make lunch. So like that kind of inconsistency is really hard.
Mm.
And so
That
I've
takes its
spent
toll, doesn't it? Yeah.
it does. It's exhausting. And the rest of the world doesn't operate that way. You need to produce 5 days a week from 9 to 5. And
Systematically just produce.
yes. Yes. And so I'm not a very linear person. A neurodivergent brain is just this beautiful, kind of complex, like driven by inspiration, but also what's your capacity at the time. That's just the rest of the world doesn't really work that way. And so for me, the ADHD piece is the novelty, the excitement, the spontaneity, but also then it's a really sensitive brain. So it's really easy to get upset. People probably think of me as a pretty calm, gracious person, but my brain, my nervous system can fly off the handle at some things that I'm not proud of. And I have to do a lot of regulation to go, whoa, okay, where'd that come from? That doesn't feel like who I am. And yet, what do I do with that? So for me, that's the ADHD piece. People often say, oh, ADHD people can't pay attention. I think it's often the opposite. We have so much attention that we just don't always know where to focus it. And so then the autistic side of things, for me anyways, and what I'm learning, is the sensory realities. I was at the dentist this week, and there are certain smells or certain textures, and my whole nervous system just is in fight or flight. Like there's a lion in the room, and I'm literally just laying at the dentist, perfectly safe. And dentist probably isn't a good thing because a lot of people don't like the dentist. But there's just this sensory reality. Sun is too bright. All the time, the sun is too bright. Temperatures are hard for me to regulate. One way I describe it is this way. I like to say that most nervous systems have like 3 or 4 sensors on them for people's emotions and tastes and textures and all these things. And an autistic person has like 50 sensors.
Jeez.
So here's the thing. If you don't know that about yourself for 40 years, then you're just like, why am I always anxious?
The judgments. It's just
so much shame. Hannah, is it Gadsby on Netflix? She's an autistic comedian. She said, getting a diagnosis is an exfoliation of shame, right? So my whole life has been, and now for the people around me who are neurodivergent going, you're not broken. In fact, you can rearrange this whole thing so that it fits who you are. So every day with my work, with my friends, with myself, with strangers, I'm just always like kind of experimenting with, can I show up in this space as who I'm learning I actually am underneath all of the pretending that I have to do to fit in? Oh, wait, that person hasn't earned the right for me to really unmask and be me. And that's okay. Yeah, it's a lot.
yeah.
I just find it all so fascinating.
I was diagnosed a year and a half ago. Called adult ADHD, but I was diagnosed with child ADHD at 65 years old. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you and I talked last time about how do we make sense of, I don't want to say the lost years, but I will say the confusing years. And there's loss in that. Even a loss of a sense of just self. You just lose a sense of self. I mean, I struggled so much as a kid with everything just seemed, and I think this is true for, when you're young, but I just couldn't get a hold of an inner life. I mean, I knew
Mm-hmm.
there was an inner life because I knew something was missing of my awareness, but it's like everything was just outside and it was way too much. And my brain was just moving at such a speed. But, as a young kid, I played in that space and loved it until I realized this doesn't fit into this world. And whatever age that was, all of a sudden, it's like more than a burden. It's kind of like I'm defective. I'm defective. In school, well, that's a whole nother conversation. So, Jenny, you're a senior pastor. I mean, the responsibility you have. I mean, we look at this metaphor of shepherd and sheep. We'll only go so far with that. I mean, Okay. So you got a lot of responsibility for a church that was started in 1955, that has such a history of love and inclusiveness and whatever. How do you do this? Is it one of the reasons because you were the oldest sibling or your father was a pastor or whatever? But I mean, do you feel like sometimes it's like I don't know how I'm doing this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I I think what I continue to learn is because I grew up in such healthy, beautiful faith communities, I saw this example of it being done well in lots of different people. And people in those spaces invited me into leadership and, stopped me in the hallway
Hmm.
and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about ministry?" I was going to be a music teacher, had been my plan when I was in high school. And that was a beautiful plan. And I went to some conference and really felt this, I think I want to try the church thing. And and so that's just where I learned how, like, I'm still reconciling all of this, right? Because you talked about your identity before, and then your identity after, and how do you reconcile that? I think I'm still in the midst of that work. But one thing I am learning is I burned out really hard a couple of years ago and had to take a year and a half off of leave
Oh
from the
boy.
local church. Yeah. And I hadn't known yet. So in that year and a half off is when I got my diagnosis.
Okay.
So that
Yeah,
was
there you go.
helpful. That was
Yeah.
helpful. And when I came to this church I'm at now, I said, okay, I'm going to try to be an out autistic pastor. Everybody knows it's not a
Mm,
secret. And
mm,
this community has just been incredible. I've experimented with work rhythms. They're all pretty flexible. We've talked about, hey, if I'm having a day where I just can't function, can there be some looseness around meetings? Can I reschedule easily? And they all
mm,
said, yeah, of course. I'm able to
mm.
work from home a couple days a week because when I'm at home, I have much less input of just sensory
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
people. And I can get a whole lot, just do good creative work and think about things. And I do a lot of pastoral care and ministry through texting, through phone calls. There's just been so much freedom and flexibility to figure out, can I function in this role and in a sustainable way?
In
And
this
honestly,
place.
in
In
this
this
place.
place.
Yes. And this church is helping me heal in that identity. I
Oh,
will say the jury is still out. It is still really hard. And my
wow.
my ADHD gets me committed to lots of things that my autistic self cannot follow through on.
Wow. Wow. Goodness. Yeah, it's that yes, 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 oh yes. New,
So I just tell
inspirational.
people around me, yeah, I tell people around me all the time, I'm like, just slow me down. Just slow. But they get excited too, because I get them excited. Anyways.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, yeah. It's so hard to manage.
Yeah. So I'm seeing some good fruit in that area and learning a lot from people around me. I have a fantastic therapist who is helping me walk that journey too, and just sorting
Wow.
through all the boundaries, all this good human stuff.
I've never talked to anybody like yourself in the line of work that you do that uh, I mean they might have felt it and thought it and it might have been happening in their life, but they never articulated that this community is healing me. I mean, I'm sure there's people doing clergy work that would say that, but I've never you had such a beautiful way of saying that.
That's how I felt about almost every community I've gotten to serve. They've shaped me so much because I was growing at the same time and
Mm.
figuring out who I was. And maybe some of this is just being a millennial pastor, right? Our generation is growing increasingly comfortable with therapeutic work and we have
Well,
language around
yes,
that. We're not afraid of
yes.
it.
No,
And so
right
I
on.
bring that into my ministry. That's not scary to me or
That's right.
uncomfortable. I actually think I've been a better effective pastor because there's been a therapeutic sense to some of that. There's one church I started to get panic attacks while I was preaching in a couple of my churches in different seasons. And that is the worst, to feel like you've got hundreds of eyeballs staring at you, talking about like love and peace and grace, and inside
Oh,
you have to leave that room. So I mean, I've stopped sermons in the middle and walked out,
really?
and it happened a couple times, and it happened at one. I've told the story a million times. They've heard it a lot, but one of my churches, I stopped in the middle of the sermon and hung my head, and I said, "I just need a minute." And I started crying, and 7 or 8 of those people in the front row got up while my eyes were closed, just stood by me and just put a hand. Didn't even really say anything. Like they're that kind of love, their ability to see me as a human, not as someone who's somehow closer to God. No, I'm just maybe paying attention with like my professional, like I'm just paying attention to the holy. I don't know, like that stuff just changes you forever. So that's how I've always seen congregants. I will also say it might have something to do with the autism because autistic people don't really see hierarchy. So the social, and like I can see it. I know that someone's a
Yeah, yeah,
boss of someone, but I think
right.
it's all wrong. It doesn't exist. It's not real to me.
Hmm.
I'm like, we're all just humans and we're all equal, right? So I just never bought
Wow.
into I'm supposed to have all this authority that you don't have. I don't.
Hmm.
I mean, appropriate power dynamics. I know all that, but I think we're actually all in this together.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Do you write like you talk?
What was that?
Do you write like you talk? If we
Yeah,
read your works and would we say, "Oh wow, there's synergy here."
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Do
Yeah.
you like to
Pretty
preach?
Plains. I love it.
Oh,
I
you
love
do?
it. Yeah.
Talk to me about
No.
preaching because I did an episode with my senior pastor Erica maybe 3 or 4 episodes ago. We tweaked it a little. We didn't go with why not church or maybe why church. We went with why not preaching or maybe why preaching. And Erica said, "Yeah, I'd really like to talk about it." So the whole episode essentially was about preaching and how she comes to it. What do you love about it, and how do you experience it, and how is it different than getting up and giving like a public speech?
It's a great, good question. I love preaching. And honestly, I continue to evolve in that because I see my strategy and my evolution of that change over the years. But I'm just fascinated by what storytelling does for our sense of community, for our sense of the divine in the world. I mean, we're going through such a hard season as humans, especially in the United States right now. And every single week, I watch the power of 15-minute, let's be honest, my church, 22 minutes of like, here's how I'm making sense of this. How are we making sense of this as a whole? Here's a divine story that has something. And oh, hey, these divine stories are not perfect. So how do we even wrestle with those? And just getting to be human together. I just continue to find that really healing and just to help people, honestly, again, back to that therapeutic lens, just helping people feel to me is a big part
Hmm.
of the work as well. Yeah.
Hmm. It's beautiful. Do you choose the scripture unlike an Episcopal church, Catholic church, and even some other churches that have a reading for that week, and so you go to an Episcopal church and it's the text universally,
Yeah.
which
So
means
yeah.
sometimes and I know because I attended 2 Episcopal churches and I know that sometimes it's like, oh, I don't want to preach on this. I don't even like this text. I don't believe it. I don't like it, whatever, but it's sitting here before me. And so it's going to do its number on me or I'll do my number on it. How does it work in the United Methodist Church?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, so a lot of people are lectionary preachers as well, and we use that same 3-year rhythm as well. I've often been a series preacher, so I'll, kind of, okay, what are the themes the church is wanting and needing to wrestle with? Okay, let's go do that theme for 3 or 4 weeks. I kind of come in and out of that, so
Huh.
a little of both. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
creative.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and these,
I just love. Go ahead.
oh no, you go ahead.
I
You
love
love?
taking people from point A to point B, realizing that we can move, realizing that we can follow a big idea and a big God and a big just
Hmm.
act in our community or within the community. And I often have said to people, I don't even know that I always care about where we're going, which I do care, but I really care about how we get there. Are we being honest
Hmm.
with each other? Are we growing in our relationships? Are we challenging parts of ourselves we don't want to deal with? Just all those ways that we heal. So I just think the sermon is a really fun way to do that.
And I think really important. I know for me, it's the pinnacle moment for me in a service. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if that's true for everybody, but
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say it's the only, clearly, it's not the only reason I'm in the service. But if somebody were to say, there's no preaching today, and we're going to do everything else, I'd be like, something's missing. Something's missing. And how do you do communion in your church and in the United Methodist Church? Because I'm gonna better be careful with what I say here. How do you do it? How do you all do it?
Yeah, a lot of Methodist churches often celebrate communion on the first Sunday of each month. So it's not
That's
usually
what
every
we
week.
do in our Baptist tradition.
Okay. Yeah, and its communion table is open to all. It's nestled there right in the service on the first Sundays, and it's a really beautiful moment. I sometimes use really beautiful liturgy that other people have written. Other times I just paraphrase and kind of contextualize it a little bit more into daily life. But it's a beautiful moment.
So you do it once the first of every month. So once a month.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Has anybody in your congregation ever, maybe you, I don't know if you could do this in your United Methodist tradition, but has anybody ever said, we should do this every Sunday?
Some do. Some people would love that. A lot of times, pastors, what they'll do if they have multiple services, they might have like an 8 a.m. service that's communion every week. So
Okay.
then they'll offer it that way, but they won't
Okay.
do it every week in maybe a bigger service. Yeah.
I heard somebody else, because I mentioned that not too long ago, and I heard somebody say, well, but then it just becomes rote and it becomes, it'll lose its essence and its luster. And I thought, you know what? In the two Episcopal parishes I attended, uh-uh. No, there was something walking up front and having that served and whatever. That to me equaled the preaching moment. So,
Well, it's interesting that you say that because something that the sermon can do, like one hit against a sermon, is that it sometimes can keep us more in our intellect and
uh,
more in our thinking space, which is beautiful. But then we miss the all the ways the gospel isn't embodied.
that's right.
And so you're right. Like we have people, they go up and light candles, or they go up and pray, or they offer music, or they have communion. And I was like, we're being formed as the body of Christ through our bodies. So
Mm. There's a good book title, Jenny. That's a
there you
good
go.
book title.
You should write that one.
I don't think I could write it. I wrote one and it about killed me.
I hear you.
In these challenging times, yeah, there's a lot of ways that we could say that. In these challenging times, what does church mean to you?
I preached a sermon last August a year ago about Christian nationalism and started with a confession, which I'm getting a little bit better about, but is still kind of true. Watching Christian nationalism take hold in such a loud way has genuinely made me push away from the church, capital C. I cannot be associated with anything that is coming out of your mouth. So it really, and I don't think I'm the only one. So I think it's really led
Oh, you're
to
not
this.
the only one.
Well, then who am I? What do I believe? And let's be honest, the Christian church has needed these moments for a long time to keep wrestling with just all the ways that we're all messed up, all the ways that we continue to not get the point of how are we involved in a hurting world and hurting society while we're over here like arguing about the color of carpet in our fellowship hall. Like we just miss the point a lot. So I'm not grateful for Christian nationalism, but it has created a moment of discernment and
Mm,
honesty that the church gets to take or not take. And so I'm honestly wrestling with that. I don't like the word Christian right now. I will say I'm a Jesus follower. So I'm just still like deconstructing, even as I'm right. We're making the plane while we're in the air, it feels like. But to me, what it does mean, what I do know, and I said this on Sunday during my children's time with the kids. I said, hey, I'm grumpy this morning. If I'm honest, I kind of wanted to stay home in bed today. And yet I know by the time I leave that building, I will have a different mindset, a different sense of joy, a different sense of connection, that I'm actually not alone. And I am part of a story that's bigger than me. And I am part of a mission that I actually do believe in the world, that we're creating beloved community. And hey, I'm still growing in my sense of justice, but I've gotten really good at holding some signs and writing some letters and trying to interrupt evil wherever I can. And so it's like I'm begrudgingly very much still part of the church, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it makes a lot of sense. You know, it's interesting. I'd like to run something past you. It was probably close to 6, 7 months ago. I did a podcast, and it wasn't about this topic of church, and so that wasn't what we were talking about. And the person that said this didn't. I don't know the person. I know the person's work on leadership. She's very well known, and it's in the podcast. I mean, I'm sure of course, she'd be fine because she sure didn't apologize for saying this. But I had two people on the podcast, and we were talking about Christian nationalism. And now that I think about it, one of the guests had written a book, Christo-fascism, I think was kind of the, yeah. So we were talking about that, And I assumed that that person would be saying some things specifically about church and Christian truth and all that behavior. But the other individual within the first, I remember like first 2 minutes, she said, "Well, I tell you what I believe this is demonic." And it's
Mm.
just interesting. It was like the word was taken out of. It was like it was taken out of context for that person's narrative. I thought, I don't my bet is you've never written about anything satanic or whatever, but it was just like it punctured the moment with. I don't hear many Christians saying that. I hear Christians saying this and that, but I mean, she just was like, it had the feeling, really, the essence, if you embodied it in the body, it'd be, get behind me, Satan. This is evil personified. And I can still feel it in my body right now. I was just like, wow. And I think she's outside of any religious tradition. She doesn't talk about that. And I thought, man, it really punctuated the moment. But I don't hear people of faith talking like that. I mean, I don't listen to everybody and read everything, but I thought, you know what? That's a bold statement. She felt free to say it. And I can imagine myself in a church context being kind of uncomfortable even saying it. Like, but I might say it to a group of people who go, say whatever you want to say, and you're not going to offend anybody because I'm full of rage. I know people that are just full of rage. And I just go, I get that, man, but I don't know what to do with that as a Christian. I really struggle with the message of love and the message of, I mean, I recently heard, love your enemy, and I just thought I've got a list of a few people on that list that I will not love. And then I just go, man, I'm in conflict, man. And I'm in conflict about it. Can you speak to some of that?
Yeah. I also, yeah, throwing around the word demonic, that's a challenging language space, I think, for a lot of people to be in.
It
I think
is.
especially people that lean a bit more progressive in their space. We've seen that word attached to so many things,
I
and
know.
it's just lost all of its reality in a way. And so I can see how that would really puncture that moment for you. That makes so much sense. I think the word I would resonate with is evil for sure. I have no problem saying, we are seeing actions in our country that are evil, that are intent on harm. I think for me, part of the invitation always has been to use the mirror both ways. That to turn that back on my own self and to say, okay, I'm
Yeah.
not perfect. What are the ways that I am unknowingly and knowingly harming
Yes.
creation, people, myself?
Yes.
So to me, that's a productive use. If we're going to talk about evil, we also look at ourselves. And then to turn that mirror outwards and to hold that up to us as a country right now and as a culture and as the church, and to say, we are so far from God's dream for us. And yet, love is still here. The Holy Spirit is not. The Holy Spirit knows. I attribute her as a she often. She knows what she's doing. I think the Holy Spirit is full of delight and joy and wisdom in this season. For me, I think the Holy Spirit is often the one that kind of nudges me to, hey, we can rest and we can still experience joy. That's how we nourish ourselves to then resist again. Like all of that cycle, I'm all here for. And I think needs a lot of reminders. Because I don't know about you, but the internet just makes me so angry.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
just oh my gosh. And then my caveat, by the way, as a really sensitive nervous system person, I get sick. Like I can't,
Wow.
I have fibromyalgia. I can't function after a couple of
Wow.
days where I had too much internet time.
Wow.
So I'm just watching the somatic reality of taking in all of this anger and hate and evil. It's like, okay, I'm of no good to anyone if I can't even function. And yet, you better believe I'm working with my 11-year-old and 13-year-old and getting poster board and looking up fun sign ideas to go to the No Kings protest this Saturday. Because we're
Yeah.
going to place our bodies in a place and tell a better story in the world of who we can be. And that
Yeah.
my baptismal vows as a United Methodist, we take a vow to resist evil and oppression in all
Boy.
forms that it presents itself.
Now, when you say you take a vow, is that clergy or is that even somebody who joins the United Methodist Church?
All people, all
All
people who get
people.
baptized.
Man, I remember when I first heard that language in the Episcopal Church when I joined. I wasn't baptized. They accepted my baptism prior. it was, do you renounce evil? Is that, and it's just like, whoa, that's heavy, man. Yes. And then I saw infant baptisms where the parents were asked to recite that. You're just like, wow, that's right on the nose.
Well, and some could say that, I use the word progressive, and I know it's a loaded word, but
Hmm.
there's things that the progressive movement also loses. Like in our desire, we kind of end up being this just like really nice, really welcoming to everybody, sometimes kind of soft and generous. And I personally love those qualities. I think they're healing and they're of God. And also, Jesus got really angry and flipped tables and cried and raged at people who didn't get it. And so it's just this moment is inviting a lot of people to step into spaces that are like really uncomfortable for them. And we just get to do that together. Yeah.
Jenny, I didn't grow up in a progressive tradition. I'm going to a progressive church now, an American Baptist church, apart from what the denomination is, a very progressive church. And I'm really proud of that. What is it about the progressive way where it loses that? I've said it the last few times in the episode, and I don't know, it probably needs to be edited out, but it's like it loses some teeth. It's almost a gumming. And I mean, that's weird. But I mean, I don't know. It's just, what is it? I mean, what shapes that to where that's the orientation of a person?
For me, I
Yes.
think what I've seen, I think progressives are more aware of the harm of a more narrow faith. And we don't want to do that to anybody. So we get real kind of, okay, like, sure, you believe that? Me too. Okay, yeah, let's just be just like all sing kumbaya and we're all, and from a therapeutic standpoint, you kind of get like, are we all just a bunch of people pleasers because we have no boundaries?
Yeah,
That's a,
I'm with you.
you know what I mean? But it's just so interesting to me that I think, yes, we have seen faith offend people in really harmful ways, and we don't want to be offensive like that. So then we swing all the way over to the other side and we lose. No, I do put my feet in this soil. This is actually not okay. And so again, I think progressive Christians and humans right now are just being forced to find the language and behavior because they're having to stand up to something that is so pervasive, so overwhelming.
Yeah, right.
They just
Right.
have to figure it out now as we go. And
Right.
honestly, some would say we've taken far too long to get to this point. We should have been this upset during Black Lives Matter, and that should have continued at that fever pitch, right?
Right.
But white dominant culture is strong, and we kind of melt back into this safety.
Yeah.
And now we're being forced with this is so loud that you really can't.
Yeah, that's right. It's crossed that threshold, hasn't it? It's like the water's come over the dam.
Yeah.
And it's flooding. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just so mindful of our Black and brown siblings and kin who have been at this justice work for much, 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 much longer. And as I listen to them, they're the ones that are leading us now to say, hey, here's what we do. Let's go do it.
That's exactly
We
right.
know how to do this. White
That's
people,
exactly,
you're not the first people to experience this. Let's go.
that's that's exactly right. Sorry that I have to look down at these notes. We said we are going to talk about witness, and that's probably a good way on our way out of our conversation. What does it look like to witness to the Christian faith in your life? And I think you're emphasizing the word witness.
Yeah.
Is that something in your tradition that's...
Yeah. Yeah. We take a vow when we join one of our churches that we'll bear witness. I often will break down with people and I'll go, okay, let's deconstruct this word here. Because if I see you knocking on someone's door asking them if they're going to heaven, like, no, don't. I always joke, right? I will deny being your pastor.
By the way, that's what I was alluding to, that I remember you saying that I couldn't shake. I told somebody else. I said,
I was like,
a person
no.
I talked to, if I see you doing that, you're in trouble.
No. Because here's the thing. I think for me, the entire thing is relational. The entire thing is story. The entire connection of faith is that Jesus just keeps doing these wild things that interrupt what people think is the thing we do. And we get to do that. But we do that in the context of relationship. And so, to me, that is, I just love it. And I love that through writing online, social media and other places, that, I may not be in a deep, deep relationship with each of those people for sure, but something of that still cuts through. So I don't know. I think we have a really beautiful story. and it's a challenging story of faith, but I think it can more than meet this moment. And are we able to talk about it and enjoy it and live it in a way that's bringing us life? I think people notice that. And the beauty of it all, which I would end with, I live my life by this contemplative stance. Dr. Elaine Heath taught it to me, and it's that we show up and we pay attention and we cooperate with God. And the hardest one is we release the outcome. And so what I love about that, and she would always say, she goes, you know how we sometimes go on mission trips and we think we're going to take God in our backpack to people as if the divine wasn't already delighting in the work wherever God is. And that was such a profound shift for me that released all the pressure. I just don't think that I'm trying to save anybody from something. I don't think that I'm trying to, I don't know. I am always deconstructing all of that, but I just feel like we're saying, this is what I'm experiencing. This is what I see to be true. And you get to do with that truly what you want. And that's been a really freeing way to begrudgingly identify with the church, even on the days that I really don't like her very much sometimes.
But I tell you, you sure make her attractive.
Oh,
You make her attractive.
thank you.
You bet.
It's been a beautiful place amidst all of its challenges. It has, and it will continue to be a place I wrestle with for sure.
Sure.
But that's what keeps our faith alive, right? The doubt,
Right
the
on.
question, the struggle. Yeah. It should all be welcome. Yeah.
That's right. Are you better for the vows that you've made as a human being? The vows within your tradition. You've noted, I think, maybe 3, and they really stand out to me. It's like, I made a vow, and so it grounds you, but has that made you a better human being, not just a better Methodist?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I noticed when I had a year and a half off of pastoring a church, I really liked it for about 8 months. I really liked not having to go to church every Sunday. And then I started to feel untethered from me. Like, right? I wasn't a part of anything bigger than me. And that was not a great feeling. And I know sometimes the church rightfully gets challenged as kind of, hopefully not a cult, but like just, we all get sucked in and then we're drinking the Kool-Aid and we think it's amazing when it's not always amazing.
Right.
But yeah, I think those vows have, the communities I've been a part of, like 15 or 16 different Methodist churches around the country in my lifetime, they have all shaped me in different ways through those vows. And I would like to think that I've grown to be a more kind and compassionate and empathetic person because of that. Yeah.
Anything else that you want to mention of all the various things that we've talked about and topics and whatever? Anything that you want to return to? And take a moment to reflect.
I think the one piece that's giving me so much hope right now in the midst of all of this is that, in a sense, all of this was necessary. One thing I really love about the Jesus story is the rhythms of death and resurrection that are wired into all of what it means to be creation and human and people together. And that I do believe God is always moving us slowly and quickly toward healing and love. And we've learned in the last 20 years, especially as a country, that we had a lot of stuff under the surface that we weren't dealing with. And now all that stuff is a lot more up at the surface. And it's awful. It's awful to look right into it. And it is evil, I think. And it hurts. It's so uncomfortable to just watch it and feel it and go, is this us? Is this in us? And it is. And also, because I've gone so deep into so much of my own pain, I'm not afraid of it. And so it's really beautiful to walk alongside people in person and in writing and in my churches to go, hey, we can actually talk about really hard things.
Really hard.
Like, love's already there and it's actually going to be okay. And that, whenever I remind myself all those things are true, there's a lot of hope there. That's not every day.
Oh no, I'm with you.
Gosh.
I don't
Like,
think
really?
anybody would. I don't think anybody would listen to this conversation and think that in any ways that was always true for you, because you've been so honest and so vulnerable with just your experience of being human.
Yeah.
But thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Let's see. There was one. Let's talk about your writing.
Sure.
And I'm remembering in your bio, it wasn't in the bio that I read. I shortened it a bit, but it was on your church website. It essentially says that you are a writing pastor. And I'm like, that's really, really cool. I imagined the church going, Not every pastor is a writing pastor. We're proud that our pastor, some are some other adjective descriptor of, we have a writing pastor. I thought that's really cool. Tell us where to find your work.
Yeah, JennySmithWrites.com has linked to my Substack, and I write that every week. People can subscribe for free. And I've been publishing a lot of poems on Facebook lately, which is how we found each other.
Yep, yep,
And so people can come
yep.
find me on Facebook. But those are the primary spots. I like to take up some space. I published 2 poetry collections, one on kind of walking with yourself, finding yourself, meeting yourself in deeper ways. And then I wrote one on grief about the first year after my brother died. And so just that was the season I was just tapping out the poems to try to process all of that grief. So those have been 2 really beautiful projects to send into the world. And I was working on another one, but had to push it off because I was counting up all of my poems about resistance work and realized I have another whole book there.
Oh
So
boy.
I'm working on
Oh
putting that
wow.
one out soonish. Yeah.
You are a
So,
writing pastor.
you know, again, comes in rhythms,
Sure,
valleys, peaks, but when it
sure.
comes and I stay open to it,
It comes.
it comes.
It comes.
Yeah.
Well, I think your congregation is proud of that.
I think so. I'd like to think so. Yeah.
I think they're proud to have you. That's my
Oh.
sense. I think they're proud to have you. Now, your husband, if I remember correctly from our last conversation, he does ministry, clergy work as well, but
He
somewhere else.
worship leader, music worship leader. So he
Okay.
leads a band at one of our other Methodist churches in Salem and
Okay.
loves that, is so good at it.
So you go one way out of the driveway and he goes the other way. And you have
Yeah, for now.
how many
Yeah.
kids do you have?
2. We have an 8th grader and a 5th grader.
And where do they get to choose between this church, that church, or no
They're
church?
usually with me. Once in a while they go with dad, but he leaves at like way too early. So yeah.
Hmm. You might be
You,
raising some clergy,
you
or
never
you might
know.
discourage them, like, no, go do something
I
else.
kind of discourage her once in a while. My daughter talks about it. I'm like, if you want to, fine. But
Hmm. I don't know why I'm feeling compelled. Can I tell you a quick story? It came out of something you said earlier about, at least my brain went to just the responsibilities you have and the work that you do. I hosted an event back in 2015 and I was able to. It's a whole cool story. I wish somebody would say, hey, let's do a podcast someday and I'm going to interview you, Doug. And I want you to tell that story about how you met Walter and how you became friends, Walter Brugman. I won't go into all that, but anyways, I hosted an event where Walter was the guest speaker, and we paid Walter to come in. And I got the great idea, which I think was a great idea. We selected about 10 people to sit up after Walter presented. He was talking about men's pain, and after it was over, we created kind of a half moon on the stage. It was an interesting setting. And we just had questions from the audience. And I and my kind of co therapist partner, we were facilitating this, Denny and I, who are both big Brueggemann fans. We picked Walter up from the airport and we're like, we know Walter's works and we're thinking he's going to be kind of hard to be with and he might be kind of gruff and he might be kind of stern and whatever. And the humility and gentleness and laughter and whatever, just like, man, you roar when you write and you roar when you preach and you roar when you teach, but you're so damn easy to be with. It was really, really beautiful. And we back to the story. So I'm thinking to myself, I've got a great question. I'm sitting on this great question. You can tell where this is going. And I say, so Walter, you said things like God is in recovery and that God is a perpetrator of violence who's in recovery. I cannot tell you how much those things meant to me to help me assimilate this Old Testament, these stories and whatever. It's helped so many people. That's helped so many people. Just call out God. Just say, wait a second. And many prayers that Walter would write, some of them had the essence of, hey, God, why don't you like show up and be God? And it's just like, and Walter believed that many times that's how God would show up then, is we had to call God out and call God in, and God then would show up. I thought, wow, I don't know what to do with that in regards to our prayer lives. Back to the story. So I said, Walter, how do you get this courage? How do you get the courage and confidence to be able to speak like that? I thought I was going to get this big long diatribe of it. I trust God, and he said, "Well, Doug," and he used my name. He said, "Well, Doug, I'm an Old Testament professor, And that's what they pay me to do. And Jenny, that was it. And I'm just like, I'm
You went
naked
the
in
whole
front of
round.
everybody.
Oh, that's amazing.
And he ended it and he didn't say another word afterwards. It's just like we just sat for a moment and I just had to gather myself. That's what they pay me to do. And there's something in that. There's something in you just be faithful to what you're supposed to do. And that's the way Walter spoke of that. Anyways, that came to my mind.
That's funny.
It's been great to be with you, Jenny. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
And we're neighbors. We're neighbors.
Yes.
McMinnville, Salem, cool. So stay with me as I hit the stop record button. We'll watch everything upload. If you don't do that, we might lose it.
Okay.
And then this will get edited soon enough. And then
Sure.
I'll YouTube it and everything, and I'll ship it to you. And you can do whatever you want with it. There's no pressure,
Okay.
there's no expectations. I would hope that even your family would just go, wow, let's
Yeah.
hear her from a different angle.
Sure. No, thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. Yep.